One last minute camera adjustment there. How's it going? Okay, just right there. There we go. There we go. Yeah, everybody's in the room. We got 5 minutes to the top, but we'll start now because it is a Sunday. So 1 o'clock is approaching Eastern time. I got about 55 degrees outside. It's chilly out. It's kind of fall-ish here, and we got rain yesterday. For the first time, we got substantial rain. And by substantial, I mean sustained rain for a little while. The grass got wet. I went up for a walk this morning. The grass didn't crunch under my feet. Says pretty good. Retired Butcher Boy says, hey, 550,000 subscribers. Congratulations, Steve and crew members. And of course, I crossed 550. I noticed it, but to me, I only call out and celebrate the hundreds at this point. Thank you very much. Good morning, all, from Johnny Knoxville, who sent me a shirt, and I thanked him for the short before I spotted the typo. But I'll be wearing that soon. Johnny points out, I don't really have a production crew. You're looking at him. You're looking at him. Craig Shackelford says the one-man production crew makes for a pleasant production meeting. Yeah, except the voices in my head keep yelling at each other in different languages. Alan Brown Sr., good morning to everyone in Lehto's land or Lehto land. We'll accept both. And Mark Miller says this is the 4th anniversary of his father's passing. So I got to call him out for that and wish you the best. So I know this kind of anniversaries can be hard. Alan Brown, hey, Steve, don't forget extra refreshment today. I remembered to bring it. Somebody sent me this. It contains two full bottles of Gatorade just pulled out of the fridge. And yeah, that's a Yeti. So it's gonna remain cold until such time as I go to drink it. So good morning from Frosty Gnome, Alaska. Andrew Lee checking in. Now, Johnny points out fall is here. Cool, fresh air coming is wonderful, but cold nights, not so much. And I'm still at the point where I have to turn the AC on during the day and the heat on at night. So, yeah, I got that going for me. Mark Miller, though, the tribute to his dad is Blue on Black by Kenny Wayne Shepherd, song that came up on YouTube 4 years ago today. Those are the kind of coincidences that stick with you. Johnny's heading up to the Vintage Radio and Communications Museum in Connecticut. I did not know there was such a thing, but that's pretty cool. Let me know how it goes. Send photographs, and I may have to check that out also. Miss Mandy Reacts says hello, and so I'm going to react by saying hello right back. The question is, what do you react to? I don't have the ability now to pull up another screen to check out your site, and I'd probably get distracted if I did and lose my place. But I know people that react to songs or react to videos or react to things. I mean, are you going to react to this, or are you taking a break from reacting at this moment in time? And by the way, I did say I'm going to kickstart this thing in a few minutes, and then every time I hear the word kickstart, I think of Kickstart My Heart. But Hobie Jackson checking in from Texas. Mark Miller says the obligatory sup. SCJ has a civil case that was supposed to go to trial in January, but opposing counsel tries over 100 cases a year, and it keeps getting postponed. And that's the sad thing, especially with civil actions, that they get postponed if the court also has criminal actions, because they tend to prioritize criminal cases over civil. But even so, they try to accommodate the attorneys. And if attorneys say, hey, look, I got a conflict. And I've actually seen a judge go, okay, what courtroom is your conflict in? How old is that case? Which case is filed earlier? I've seen a judge pick up a phone and call another judge. Go, okay, we got to resolve this right now. One of us is going to try a case with this guy, come hell or high water. So Johnny says, hey, it's almost time for a coffee and a Steelers loss. Are they not doing so well this year? I'm not a big NFL fan. Even if the Lions threaten to make the playoffs, I don't really follow them because it's just I'm like Charlie Brown with a football and Lucy as the Lions. Okay, just keeps pulling the football. I mean, how many times do you fall for that, right? Stephen Cook, hey Steve, great Friday show. Love ELO also. And I did go and see ELO this past Wednesday. I posted a video about it on my second channel. And it's a review of the concert. I told people this, I still stand by this. It was the best concert I've ever seen. I've seen some good concerts. I've seen Elton John. I've seen The Cure. I've seen the Allman Brothers, Beach Boys, all kinds of shows over the years. And it was a combination of everything. Jeff Lynne says this is his final tour, so he's doing everything just right. Played every single song I would have expected him to play. 20-song set. I had seats that were really, really close to the stage. So had a great seat and saw everything. So I did a review. I posted some photographs to show you what it looked like. It was an amazing show. And if you're not a big ELO fan, I understand not everybody's got the same musical tastes, but it was an amazing show. And I've got friends who asked me saying, "Hey, Steve, I got a chance to go see them. Should I?" And I'm like, yes, yes. If you like the band and they're coming to a town near you, check them out. This is probably your last chance. Other bands have retired and said we're never coming back, and then they come back. But Jeff Lynne's in his 70s. He came here about 5 years ago, I believe, the last time, and then announced this tour. And I'm like, okay, I'm going because I'd never seen them before. Always wanted to, just never made it to the show. So that's how that goes. I've had some other bands that I had some trouble getting to see. It's a running joke. People who know me know that I went to see Gary Newman. I've seen him twice now in the modern era. But I had tickets to see him or intended to see him on 3 different occasions, and conflicts interrupted it where I couldn't see him. And it became my thing. And if you don't know much about Gary Newman beyond the song Cars, I won't even try to explain it to you, but just trust me on that one. Sarah C., good morning. Definitely lots of rain. So yeah. G. Keyman's checking in. Steve Lehto and friends. SCJ, what's your favorite percentage of milk? I like whole milk, which is actually 3.25%. Fun fact, I'm not a big milk drinker. I'm not. I'll be honest here. I'm not bashing milk. I'm not anti-milk. I'm just not a big milk drinker. I'm not. I assume that God wants us to drink Diet Coke 24 hours a day. Hugo's Travels is checking from Mexico, usually from Torrance, California. So Joshua Gibson's checking in saying he's mounting a new scope. Is that for a weapon of some sort, or are we talking a telescope, microscope? Could be all kinds of things, right? Nate Fish, Steve, Nate, Lawrence Staten also checking in from Mexico. Randall Munson checking from Huntsville, Alabama, where they did a lot of rocket work back in the old days. So Rick B1, howdy from Mississippi. Michael Doherty says, please like the video. Steve works hard to inform and entertain. I should hire that man to do my public relations. Inform and entertain. It sounds like I'm doing double duty there. Hello, everyone from Paramount, California, says the Queen. Just Queen. Minnesota's checking with John Thompson. Very windy, by the way, getting more familiar with the Institute for Justice. Yeah, check them out. They're a wonderful organization. They're doing a lot of good work that otherwise would not get done. And I think they are almost, not completely, but largely responsible for how much attention has been paid to civil asset forfeiture, getting the word out about the injustice of it. iReal Media is checking in from Ottawa. Hi, Steve. Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin, Bob Bauer. It's the name of a disc jockey here in Detroit named Bob Bauer, who was on WLLZ and WRAF for a while. DePaul's checking in from Staten Island, partly cloudy and 68F. I'm still in the 50s here, overcast. They got more rain coming this afternoon, which I don't mind. We've had such little rain, we can use it now. I'd rather get some rain now than get tons of snow or something down the road. Davey Max checking in from Vancouver, not too far from the Canadian Robot Lady. Yeah, and she worked in radio for a long time over there in British Columbia. So I've actually met people and had been contacted by people who said, Steve, I hear this voice. She used to be on the radio. And I'd say, yeah, but where? And they would name a place that I knew that she used to be on the radio. I'm like, yeah, that's it. That's her. So there you go. Shocking Guy joined me on my journey, says, yo, Steve, hey, I'm sitting in my truck live streaming on my channel, and I saw your live stream pop up. I was just in Detroit not too long ago. Oh, cool. I'll have to check that out. Matatoir, can't miss a Lehto Slaw live video. Michael Mize, how long do you think before Hell, Michigan freezes over? Hell's a little town near Pinckney, near one of the best mountain biking trails in the Midwest, a place called Potawatomi. But Hell will freeze over, I'm guessing, probably November. We sometimes get some early snaps, but I don't think we're going to get any this year. So Joshua Gibson's checking from Amish Country, Tennessee. And it jumped on me again. And I have to apologize. After I shoot these videos, I usually wait a little while, and then I go back and I rewatch it. But I rewatch it with the chat on the side so that I can see, what was going on. And see if I missed anything. And I discovered that quite often I miss stuff. I miss stuff. And it's like, whoa, how would I miss that? And it turns out that I miss stuff because when I see a good question, I start answering it. I purposely take my eyes off the chat because I have a hard time reading and talking at the same time. When what I'm reading is different than what I'm talking. And so, I'm out of focus. There we go. I can't move. I got to stop moving my hands, I guess. And so I feel bad because sometimes I miss stuff and it is not on purpose. It is literally just bad timing or whatever. So I apologize if I miss a question. It is not me picking on anybody on purpose. iReal Media says Jeff Lynne is a genius producer of Beatles Free as a Bird. Jeff Lynne's known, of course, as being the main guy behind ELO. I said he founded it, and I got some angry comments. People going, "Oh, there are other people in the band." Yeah, I know. It's hard to found a group as one person, right? I mean, but he's known as the guy behind the band. But he also produced stuff for other people, including Tom Petty, for instance. Johnny Knoxville, Fast at Ridgemont High. You had seats so close to the stage, you probably scared the band. Oh, Gilbert, not thrilled hearing radio songs in concert like other tracks, though. Well, if they're good live, but the thing about ELO, of course, I don't listen to the radio anymore, but I don't hear them that often on the radio or other similar things. Like I'm not sure if I've heard ELO on Sirius in some time because the stations I listen to, but it was nice to see them do all those songs that I listened to and grew up listening to. So, PWNULOLUMAD. Will you tune the Viper and take it to the drag strip? No, I'm not really inclined to do that. Only because I'm the type of guy who'd spin it out and slam it into the wall. And then I'd have a hard time explaining it to my insurance company. Although a friend of mine said, he goes, "Hey, I know a tow truck driver who'll tow it someplace for you. And that way you can create a better police report saying that you ran it off the side of the road or something." Sub GR77 is trying to start a war. He says, "I just want to say gravy is good and Zagnuts rule. That is all." Zagnuts are like the evil candy that the family on the block that hates kids hand out. I remember getting Zagnuts and just taking them and throwing them. Like I'm not even going to carry it home. Zagnuts. What? Rusty D checking from Panama City Beach, Florida. By the way, I mentioned a little while back that I actually did a video about it. Two of the guys on the Chrysler Turbine Car program, Bill Carey and Jerry Gross, passed away very recently. They both helped get Jay Leno's car running, and they saw it run, and then they both passed away within a few weeks of each other. So I did a video about that. I actually attended Bill Carey's funeral about 2 weeks ago, and I attended Jerry Gross's 2 nights ago. And I talked to both families extensively, but spent a lot of time talking to Jerry Gross's kids on Friday night. And it's just amazing talking to these people about, they grew up and their dad was one of these guys who worked on one of these programs, built a fleet of jet-powered cars, turbine-powered cars. So amazing. iReal Media says I Assassin is Gary Newman's best album. I Assassin is good. It is indeed good. So is Replicas. I think Replicas as a concept album is actually pretty cool. Pete Nicholas, did you see the SpaceX launch and catch today? No, I did not. I saw photographs of it popping up on Twitter and Facebook and elsewhere. Fox Loco says, "I'm going to sue you, Steve, for what? Not sure yet. When? Not sure yet. Could be in 100 years. Yes, sue my estate." I want to go with people at my grave yelling, going, "You ripped me off, Lehto." George Booth, I listened to all the songs from your ELO concert after you told us about Setlist FM. Great site. Loved listening to all the old songs. Thanks. I haven't heard of them before. There's a cool website, and it's one of those things somebody came up with the idea, setlist.fm. And you can look up bands who are touring, and people will go in and fill in the sets of what they played in concert. And it's pretty accurate, especially with a big tour like ELO. And I remember I had heard that this site existed, and I went there because I went to a Natalie Merchant concert back in the 90s, and she played a song live that I liked a lot, but I couldn't find the song anywhere. And I didn't know what it was called because it had an unusual name. And years later, I said, wait, I can just go to Setlist FM and type in Natalie Merchant Pine Knob, and I found it. And the song is called Gulf of Araby. It was a cover song. That's why she didn't talk about it all that much. I don't think she covered it that many more times. But the cool thing is I found it by doing that. And so they actually have some old concerts on there too. But the real cool thing is, and I told this in the video, is that I've been at a concert and a band played a song I didn't recognize. And I go to setlist.fm and I go to look at their last show, and I accidentally clicked on the show I was at, and somebody was filling the things in real time. Somebody near me in the audience was actually going, okay, they just played this song. They just played this song. So, oh. Johnny Knox, I loved when my cousin played the drag strip vinyl records when I was a kid. And the announcer would say, Pomona, California. If you remember, I'm sure this is common everywhere, but there'll often be different advertisements on the radio where they do something like that. And they would have these deep voiced announcers with tons of echo talking about Detroit Dragway and the different places they had racing in Detroit. And I remember that vividly as well. So I did see someone check in from New Zealand. New Zealand Kiwi NZ AFA in the house. And I love New Zealand. I've never been there, but I'd like to go there someday. Have not been there yet, though. I will one of these days. Chuck Puck says, what do you think of all the EV fires in the saltwater during the hurricane? Who ends up liable? There's a lot of stuff they need to work out with these vehicles. And part of the problem is that, I mean, the fact that it's an EV, excuse me. The fact that, okay, so now we're now going to try the new system here, where we take off the cap here and we pour this concoction. Oh my gosh, this is cold. This that's cold. Okay, hang on. Oh boy, let's see how this goes. Hang on. Oh, that's nice and cold. It's icy cold. Wow. I could do ads for Yeti. Somebody contact Yeti. Have them call my people. Pissed off handicap guy had my Cobra replica sideways doing 55. Not fun. I've never gotten sideways in my Cobra, nor in my Viper. I've barked the tires a couple times sheerly through accident. And I've never barked the tires in the Cobra only because that's the kind of thing where you are toying with danger, my friends. You're toying with danger. Getting back to the EV fires, though. The fact that the car is an electric car, I mean, it's an automobile. It's got insurance on it, and it's got flood damage, right? So the damage gets covered by the insurance, assuming. And so what I'm most concerned about is whether the insurance companies did their prognostications properly, because with risk management, you try to determine in advance what the odds are of any kind of cost you may have. So a lot of companies, I suspect, just said, well, it's a car. It costs this much. It's going to cost this much to fix if it gets damaged. No. There's other problems that have come along, such as, batteries need to be replaced. It's more expensive than simply replacing the battery in a regular car, so it's going to be a mess. It's going to be a mess. But we'll have to wait and see. Gilbert's says a friend rolled a car in Waterford. Police wrote the report using the nearest cross streets. Duncan Campbell, hey Steve, sorry I'm late, but he's checking in from Australia, I assume. Crux 173, what's up, dude? Steve G checking in from San Diego. Sub GR77, have you tried a Zagnut? Yeah, years ago. I mean, I don't write things off because they got weird names. I don't care about that. No. I forgot what was in it that I found so repulsive. I do not like coconut. So if I see something with coconut in it, on it, or near it, I'm like, not for me. So that might be the problem right there. Scott Argyle checking in from Seal Rock along the Oregon coast. Taco Cat says Zagnut is the 5th best candy bar, assuming there are only 4. Michael Lawless, you ever get lemon law cases with the German car manufacturers? And I'm going to insert the word or, because I assume that's what you mean. or exotics like Ferrari, McLaren, or Lamborghini. I've heard of them. I've not had any that I can think of. Primarily because I suspect that those kinds of dealers put way more effort into fixing a car than the American car companies do at the dealership. So, but I've never handled any, but I know some attorneys who have. And trust me, manufacturers don't want to buy back a $500,000 car if they can avoid it. Reiner, man, it's too nice to be indoors here, but today, but here I am checking in. So, Devin Bound checking in from the northwest of the Pacific Northwest. Is that like Pacific Northwest squared? The northwest of the Northwest. Jay Klein checking in from Cincinnati. I got friends in Cincinnati. It's a neat little town. I've not spent a lot of time there, but I've driven through it a few times. It's a really cool bridge. It's along I-75 someplace. I remember driving and pulling my camera out, taking pictures. I got stuck in traffic on it, but I wasn't moving real fast. But yes, I was taking pictures while driving. G Vogt, hello, lawyer dog from Albuquerque. Thank you, my friend. Good to hear from you. We're just going to go ahead and jump ahead because I can't keep up with this. I was trying to read them all as I was going. Zach says Geico made an announcement that they will not insure Cybertrucks, but then I heard somebody else say that they had reversed themselves on that. So I'm not sure. We'll have to see. Jay Klein, the Viper is the last real "it will kill you if you don't pay attention" car. Yeah, and I like to tell people that, my Viper could kill you. My Cobra wants to. Oh, boy. Sometimes I listen to myself, are any new cars museum worthy? Any new cars? It's it's hard to say. But someone just asked a question, and I'm now going to take my own advice and go to Setlist FM. There we go. And type in Jeff Lynn. What's going on here? I know this right here is the highlight of the show. Watching Steve type things into his phone. Oh, boy. And somehow that didn't work. Oh, boy. Change browsers. Okay. Jeff. I knew this was not a good idea. Okay. So the show I attended was Jeff Lynn's ELO at Little Caesars. He started with One More Time, which is the most modern song he did, but it was appropriate because he's going out. This is last One More Time. Evil Woman, Do Ya, Showdown, Last Train to London, Believe Me Now, Stepping Out, Rock Aria, 10538 Overture, Strange Magic, Sweet Talking Woman, Can't Get It Out of My Head, Fire on High, Living Thing, Telephone Line, All Over the World, Turn to Stone, Shine a Little Love, Don't Bring Me Down, and Mr. Blue Sky. So he did not do Calling America. Also did not do Tightrope. It's a couple of songs he didn't do, but he did 20 songs, and it trust me, he checked all the boxes. I've been to shows where the bands don't do their biggest song of all time, and it's like, what? So Johnny Knoxville, I'm sure actuaries love EVs. I have a sneaky feeling that there are some actuaries who are now getting yelled at when they said somebody should have anticipated some of these other problems. Jeff Jones, Triumph or Norton? I'm not a big motorcycle guy. My brother has a Triumph. My other brother had a Norton. So I understand there's bike guys out there who will fight the death over that, some of whom are Norton guys. But I like the way the Triumphs look. I think they're cool looking motorcycles, but I've never owned a bike, not a motorcycle. Convective Productions checking in from Mustang, Oklahoma. Hi, Steve. Glad you did that. So let me see now. Did it's jumped on me a couple times. Oh, Thomas Austin checked in, said, "Keep it up, Steve." I knew I missed a billboard there, and I apologize. I'm not, like I said, I'm not skipping anybody on purpose, at least not yet. Tim Nossum, silly question. Of course, there are no silly questions. Do leaves affect handling on the Viper like they would a motorcycle? Those back tires are huge. No, 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 no. I mean, if you were to drive through a pile of leaves, like on somebody's lawn, maybe, but the tires are like this wide. So you'd have to hit a big, big patch of something to lose control of that traction back there. So, no. Mrs. Teresa, 1999, hi from Geneva, New York. Again, have a great weekend, Steve. Thank you. I appreciate that. Geneva, New York, of course, is the home of WLLW, the radio station I went and guest disc jockeyed at a couple of years ago. Had a blast playing the classic rock on the radio station where they shut up and rock. Gilbert, 20 songs, you got your money's worth. Yes, and by the way, the warm-up band was Rooney. I'd never heard of them before, and they were good. And I'm like, well, these guys are good. And I remember hearing that they had a warm-up band. I'm like, who would they have warm up for them? Because they're so big, they could probably just offer it to anybody. And so I don't know if they had to do a deal with a record company or something, but this band comes out. They go, hi, we're Rooney, we're from Los Angeles. And they played 7 or 8 songs maybe I'd never heard of before. But I'm like, these guys are pretty good. Because most warm-up bands I've seen that I've never heard of before, I'm like, not really. So Chaos Reigns checking in from Washington, D.C. Randall Munson, happy 249th birthday to our U.S. Navy. 249. Next year's a 250? That's pretty big. Valerie Ann, I despise coconut too. Now, I'll admit, I don't despise coconut as much as I despise egg salad. But that's the levels of despisement, how much you despise something. Toe Twacker says, who did you tow for? I never towed for anybody in Southern California. I towed for the Birmingham Police Department, but not directly. We were contracted. I worked for a gas station called Tillard's Mobile at the northwest corner of Adams and Maple. Gilbert can tell you all about it. The gas station is still there under new management, and they had half of the towing contract along with a company called Bob Adams. Bob Adams was up on what they used to call Hunter. Now it's called Woodward, but it's a long story. And every other month, we had the towing contract for the city of Birmingham. So we towed wrecked vehicles. We towed vehicles that were being impounded. And if you were just someplace and you saw a police officer go, I need to get my car towed, they would call us. We'd run out there and we'd take care of it. So you'd have to pay for it. But so I got to tow all kinds of things. I did a video for Vin Wiki about my towing experiences. And I've talked about some of them on my own channel as well. So Fatty McButterpants' Tightrope wasn't released as a single, which is a crime. His record companies never put forth any effort to promote him. Yellow. I was not aware of that. I have to go double check which singles were released as singles versus getting radio airplay. Because that's the weird thing, is that there were album rock stations that would play cuts off of albums that weren't singles. But of course, like Telephone Line was released as a single and it charted in America. So Lowell Riggs, I am. Hey, Steve. Manitoba misanthropes, anything that much mayo should be illegal. Jim F. Aren't any good labor jobs or jobs in general that you know of or recommend? I'm not sure. All I know is I've talked to people in the building trades lately, and they say they cannot find help. And so if I was like, well, it's the end of the season right now, but if I graduated high school last fall, last spring, it was, my last year of high school, I would have just gone out and just looked for a job working at a construction site because the pay is good. I mean, it might be hard work, but when you're a young man, you can do it. Sarah C says, yeah, and chicken salad, ick. Arthur Schweiger, hi from Memphis, down here from Minnesota doing some recording. Oh, really? Cool. Yeah, Memphis is one of the recording hotspots in America. Memphis and Nashville are both known for being down there in the Mid-South, as they call it. Of course, there's a lot of recording done in L.A. and New York as well. But Rex Foucher, ever listened to the Moody Blues? Of course. I had older brothers who exposed me to a lot of stuff. And so In Search of the Lost Chord, Voices in the Sky is one of my favorite songs. And sadly, working at oldies radio stations, we got stuck playing things like Go Now, and Nights in White Satin. And I never really cared for Nights in White Satin, but it's it's long, it's ponderous. Other songs by them I liked so much better. But in fact, I even bought their album that they put out in the late 70s or early 80s. It was one of the last albums they put out as a group, I think. But yeah, I've always liked the Moody Blues as well. Tim Nossum, are there any plans to meet Ed with Vin Wiki soon? I'm planning on, in fact, I've got a, what did I do with it? You know, everything's within reach. I just don't know where any of it is. I actually have a list of stories to tell on Vin Wiki. I just haven't told Ed yet. Michael Lawless says the Beastie Boys opened their gold record and decided to play it and see what it was, and it turned out to be a Neil Diamond album. Oh boy. Mark Miller, is it ever a good idea for a salesperson or manager to repo a vehicle by force? No. I know the attorney who handled that $800,000 case here in Michigan. It's a good friend of mine. And he hears a story like that. And all I can think is like, oh my gosh, I wish I had that case. Now, I don't know if that guy's filed a lawsuit yet because the dealership might be out of business and uncollectible. But Jeff Jones, I live in Birmingham, where Jeff Lynne was born. Many musicians from Birmingham. Of course, you're referring to Birmingham, England. I knew that as well. Michael Lawless says Kanye has recorded his last few albums in hotel rooms. Okay. Valerie Ann says Southside Johnny rocks, and I'm not sure what she's referring to. I must have missed a comment above, but a couple days ago on camera, I wore a Southside Johnny t-shirt, and that was not sent to me. That's my own personal shirt. Once in a while, I break out a personal shirt of mine and wear it on camera. I love Southside Johnny. I've never seen him perform. I'm not sure if he's still touring right now, or if he ever gets out of the New Jersey area. But people who are big into that scene, like the Bruce Springsteen thing, Southside Johnny came up with those guys with his own band, and they're friends. In fact, Southside Johnny does a song, at least one song I know of, Talk to Me, that Bruce Springsteen basically wrote for him. And I've seen footage of them performing the song together, where Bruce Springsteen brings Southside Johnny. Hey, come on, sing a song with us. So Rusty PFA says, I would consider any ELO concert that didn't play Rollover Beethoven a huge disappointment. As I did point out, that's one song they did not play. But you know something, number one, it's a cover. But number two, the songs he did play, like I wouldn't look at it and go, gee, take this song out and put that in. I mean, you know, if he's got to draw the line somewhere, he's going to have to leave out a couple. Convective Productions ever get into Frank Zappa? A little bit. I remember, of course, Dental Floss Tycoon, Montana, and also Bobby Brown. And he's one of the most interesting people. You just go read his Wikipedia entry. I mean, just read about the stuff he did and so on. But he was such an interesting character. But one of the things I'm blown away by, and I can't really get into it here for obvious reasons once you know, but he has a song called Bobby Brown. And if you listen to the song and ignore the lyrics, you're going, this is the coolest song ever. Why wasn't it a hit? And then you listen to the lyrics and they register and you're like, oh, that's why it wasn't a hit. They couldn't play this on the radio anywhere. Literally, there's no place on earth this could be played where people understand English. And if you do some research, you discover the song did get airplay in countries where English was not the primary language. But Frank Zappa was so anti-establishment, I'm surprised that he even put records out, because he had to work with somebody to get the records made. But in my opinion, I could be completely wrong about this, but in my opinion, he puts a song out like that to prove, if I wanted to, I could have a hit record. I just don't care. And I just saw, and one of the things that got me thinking about Frank Zappa recently was Dweezil was recently on Rick Beato. And my first thought was, okay, Rick Beato's interviewing Dweezil Zappa, Frank's son. How interesting could this possibly be? And a half an hour later, I'm going, this is one of the greatest videos I've ever seen. And it's titled something like "What Eddie Van Halen Taught Dweezil Zappa," and I'm like, I like Eddie, I like Rick, so I'm gonna watch this video to see how far along it gets before I get bored. It was amazing. And it turns out that Dweezil met Eddie when Dweezil was quite young, and Eddie sat down with him and said, "Okay, here's how I do this," and he was actually explaining to him how he plays the guitar. And now it turns out Dweezil's an amazing guitar player, and it was just one of the most fascinating things I've ever seen. And in one of Rick Beato's other videos, he talks about how new media has changed everything. And it used to be that if you wanted to watch a video of an interview with someone like Dweezil Zappa, it'd be a 5-minute interview on some station or some program that would have no viewers. But he can do an interview, and if he wants to do an hour, he does an hour. He wants to do 2 hours, he does 2 hours. Like he makes as long as he wants to. And if people want to watch it, it turns out millions of people watch these videos. It was the most amazing thing. But yeah, I a lot of respect for Frank Zappa. I never saw him live or anything, but yeah, very impressive guy. Not a band account. How is federal income tax legal when Congress never legally defined income? Currently working interpretation is ambiguous. I've never gotten heavily into the tax code, so I'm not sure. But this might get us into the concept of the Chevron deference argument. And that is Congress occasionally delegates its authority to other organizations within the government. And it might be, for instance, that the Congress passed the law that gave the IRS power to define certain things. But I don't know. I've never studied it, so I don't know. 69 Coronet 500 says Southside Johnny has a Cincinnati date on his website. I think I saw that. Yeah, that's still a hike for me because I got to drive all the way across Ohio to get there. John Nowak Jr., I'm late, but I'm alive in Corpus Christi, Texas. That's good enough. Mark Miller, Dweezil was a session player on Winger's first album, and he was awesome on that album. Yeah, I did not know what his resume looked like. Apparently, he's got an amazing resume. Got to give him credit for that. Ryan Lab says Chevron is gone. Yes, but my point is the concept of it. The concept of Chevron was that Congress is allowed to delegate duties to other departments if they want to, and then when those rules get litigated, how much weight does the government get versus the litigants and so on? But another story altogether. Bob Summers, would you agree that having to pay for a stamp on my absentee ballot might constitute a de facto tax? That's interesting. I'm kind of surprised, now that you raised that point about the fact that if you are mailing in your ballot, you got to put stamps on it. But they're going to say, well, yeah, but anything you mail's got to get. And if you didn't want to pay the stamp tax, you could always go and vote in person. I wonder if anybody's litigated that. That'd be an interesting argument to say. Trent, have you ever played with ham radio? Hello from Tampa Bay. No, I have not. I've mentioned before my brother was a ham radio guy back in the early days doing the actual, Morse code thing. And I've got a lot of hams in the audience. Yes, I'm pouring stuff from a thermos here, but it is not coffee. It is Gatorade. It's ice cold. A viewer sent me this and said, "Hey, Steve, I got tired of watching you working with plastic bottles on your show." So Valerian used to see Southside Johnny at the Stone Pony all the time. Yeah, it's one of those things I'm baffled by. I'm absolutely baffled by how there can be these amazing bands that are known locally and they just don't break out the way you'd like to see them break out. And I admit I'm a kind of a latecomer to Southside Johnny. I saw him on David Letterman. And I'm like, who is this guy? And it's like, oh, he's been around for 20 years. Back when I first saw him. Now it's like 40 years. And likewise, there's the Michael Stanley Band. They were huge in Ohio, but they got a little bit of airplay with one or two songs elsewhere, but they were huge. And on the other hand, Bob Seger in Detroit was huge for a little while locally, and all of a sudden, boom, he exploded. And so it's always strange to me how that happens, where some bands make it out of their little pond, other ones don't. And I just don't quite get that. Michael Lawless, does Chevron decision mean all federal administrative law can be challenged? Well, it could always be challenged. What Chevron had said was that when an agency comes into court and says, this is our policy that we've enacted, a regulation or a rule or whatever it might be, and we think this was what Congress wanted us to do. The courts used to have to look at that and go, okay, well, Congress delegated that duty to them. Therefore, they get deference, meaning that we give them the benefit of the doubt. And the Supreme Court just said, no, they don't get any deference. It's both sides get to argue the case on equal footing. That's basically what they're saying, but they took 40 pages to say it. So Old McDonald has a car. I miss my 69 Coronet. I should never have gotten rid of it. What'd you have in it? I had a 69 Dodge Charger. What's funny is back then we thought like 318s were bad engines. Oh, all it's got is a 318. Gilbert says my ballot is postage free. Janice Ellery points out that Frank Zappa and the Mothers were mentioned a Deep Purple Smoke on the Water. Yeah, one thing I've always been impressed by is how musicians know about other musicians, even if they're obscure, because they'll say, oh, by the way, you got to check this guy out. So if somebody's doing something remarkable, other musicians will find out about it, whether or not the person is, having hit records. DePaul 31 says Springsteen used to show up unannounced at the Stone Pony. Lou T 1501 says Oregon is mail only voting and the state pays the postage. Mail only? Like there's literally no polls? Tim Nosman says Sponge is a great band from Detroit that didn't get much airplay, a one-hit wonder. Yeah, I kind of forgot about them. So Rex Foucher, what is your musical interest range other than classic rock? I like all kinds of music. I admit I'm not a big country fan. So I don't follow country music at all. But other than that, there's a lot of pop music I do like. I'm not as big on the modern pop music. I don't care for stuff with all the pitch correction and all that stuff, but I like all kinds of music. So it's not me 07. What did I miss? I'm late. Sorry. Not much. Oh boy. Oh. Coronet 500 says mine is a 383 auto. First car, owned it for 40 years this March. So my Charger had a 383 in it with an auto torque flight. I put a 4-barrel carb on it, largely because I wanted to burn more gas. But unfortunately, my car rusted out really, really badly. My car was in a junkyard years ago. I guarantee it's been scrapped and recycled since, and it was nowhere. You couldn't have restored it without literally replacing almost everything. It was bad. Johnny Knoxville says Steve's a closet goth listener. Yeah, goth. Oh. I pity the fool. Says you don't follow country. Bye-bye to your Swiftie viewers. I don't think I've got a lot of Taylor Swift fans in the audience, but I might. My audience tends to skew demographically towards me. That is, people my age and who kind of look like me. Oh boy. This is a very unlearned question, I admit, says Randy Pabo, but can an attorney on direct object to his client's response to his question? Well, you wouldn't object to it. That'd be very, very bad form. Um, but that's if you had a situation like that, it literally means that the attorney didn't do the right job of preparing his client. I've had a client give the wrong answer before. They weren't thinking, they were confused or whatever. But you wouldn't object to it. You try to straighten it out or clear it up. So if you ask the question and the client said the wrong thing or was off completely off base, you try to redirect it and bring it back around. Oh, I don't know if you heard that little buzzing, but that was my phone letting me know that the Canadian robot lady will be here shortly. I love modern technology. Tim Nossum says, I miss reading the CD liners when bands mention other bands. The music industry is missing this. Oh, remember albums? You bought an album and you got this big holder that the 33 came in, right? And the album had album cover and jacket and all this information. And often they'd open up and they'd have photographs and they'd have information. And I mean, I knew guys who studied that stuff and would tell you, like, oh, I know who the sound engineer was on that record. And it's amazing. And so now if you download a song, like I actually forget the titles of songs unless I look at my phone. Oh, that's the name of that song. And you couldn't forget that stuff if you put the LP on the record player and you looked at the jacket as you listened to the album for the first time. So I was actually at an antique show yesterday. I go antiquing. And and I walked through a couple of booths that had LPs in them. And I was flipping through LPs and I'm going, this is what I miss. I miss looking at the jackets and all that and reading all the information on them and looking at the artwork and all that stuff. So Timothy McElls has just passed a beautiful blue Viper and got me thinking, how often do you drive yours? I drive it occasionally. It's been a couple of weeks since I drove the Viper. I drove the Cobra like 3-4 days ago. It depends on the weather and where I'm going. But the Cobra has no roof. So chillier weather, it's the Viper. Definitely. Oh. Art S, do you have an old school stereo? No, I do not. I do not even have a record player. I've got records. I've still got records, but I've got no record player. So Ram 50 V8. I just recently discovered a band that's been around since 2009 called Broken Peach. Not familiar with them. I can tell you, though, that occasionally I'll find a song and I'm like, oh my God, this song is so good. And then I realize it came out in 2012. And I'm like, wait, this song came out 12 years ago? And I look around and it turns out that it never got an airplay or never. I'm like, what? Like, why have I never heard of this song before? And to me, that's the biggest, it's such a crying shame to understand that this song's been out there and I didn't know about it. How is that possible? Gilbert says there's great antiques in northern Wisconsin. Okay. The antique show I was at yesterday was in Davisburg, Michigan, not Davis Sun, but Davisburg. So if you head north out of Detroit, Davisburg is off of 75 up north of Pine Knob a ways. And it's a huge, huge county park over there. And every year they do this twice a year where they basically dedicate the entire park to vendors with antiques and stuff. And I actually bought a bunch of stuff, but not like big furniture and stuff. My mom would, back in the old days, go to a place and come back with like a set of chairs. I'm like, we need more chairs. I didn't know that. Mark Smith has put snow tires in the Viper. Jay Paul says we are antiques compared to Johnny Knoxville. Hey, we are all getting older. I pity the fool. Speaking of legal questions, do Michigan attorneys file a certificate of representation during a court case? No, you file what's called an appearance, but I suppose they might call it different things in different states. But generally speaking, if someone hires me and says, Steve, I need you to represent me in this case, I file an appearance with the court. It's a document that says, with a case caption on it, I, Steve Lehto, attorney at law, notify the court that I am making an appearance on behalf of and will be representing so and so. And that puts the court clerk on notice to put me on the mailing list for every single thing that the court sends out regarding that case. I'll get the notices, I'll get the calendaring information. And then I also send a copy that the other side knows they got to CC me on stuff also. But you can actually walk into court and make an appearance at the last minute. I've done that too, where someone says, hey, Steve, I got to go in court. I got to be there tomorrow, 9:00 in the morning. Can you represent me? And I've shown up before and said, hi, I'm here on behalf of so-and-so. And some courts will actually still make you fill out an appearance. And there's a court-approved form that you fill out that has all the information, blanks on it. You fill it in. You file that with the court. But I've done one of those where I'm like walking out the door. I'm never working the case again because we resolved it. But some courts are like, no, we got to have everything in the file just in case. And so somewhere down the road, somebody could come forward and say, contact the attorney on that case. So they have the appearance in the file. So there you go. James Chamelix says, this is a test, but remember, this is only a test. This has been a real emergency. You've been told where to go and what to do. Somebody here started a conversation about lane change features and so on. And I got to tell you, I mentioned I bought a brand new Ford Explorer a couple weeks ago. It's got 800 miles on it now. And it has a feature I hate. It has I was thinking about doing a video about how much I hate this one feature on my truck. And it's got a feature where if it thinks that you are weaving or doing anything that it doesn't like, it'll actually go ding, 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 ding. And it puts a thing on the dashboard that says, recommend the driver take a nap or something stupid like that. Recommend the driver take a break or take a rest. And what triggers it, because I've seen it now 3 times, sometimes if you are turning from a road without bright white lines onto a road without bright white lines, the car doesn't realize what you're doing. And so for whatever reason, it thinks you're swerving around like a drunken person. And I was following instructions that were being given to me on my phone, and it says, turn left to the next road. So I go turn left, and I was like, ding, 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 recommend driver take a break. And I'm like, no, I'm making a turn onto a dirt road. And it's like, we find these things annoying, right? But you have to understand, there's a whole floor of people at Ford, a whole floor of people who worked on that program and decided it was ready for prime time and loaded it into vehicles like my brand new Explorer. And it's so annoying, and it is so not ready to be rolled out because it's stupid. And I have to hit this OK button to make it go away. And of course, I'm learning the buttons on my car now. And it's so, they need to find that entire floor of people and fire them all. And then find out, like, if they have relatives working at the company, and fire them too. Because it is, you don't understand. You can buy a car for a lot of money, love everything about it, and have something like that happen, and you want to punch the dashboard. And when you can evoke that kind of hatred from somebody who just dropped that much money buying one of your products, you've done something wrong. And that is the most annoying thing I've had happen lately in a vehicle. It drives me crazy. And I'm going to look to see if there's a way to turn it off, but I suspect there's no way to turn it off. And it's one of those things, unless the federal government mandates it, there's no need for that. It is the dumbest thing I've ever had in a car. So, Alan Brown Sr., how much is Ford charging you to use the option? if they were, I'd cancel subscription immediately. Old McDonald has a car. My wife's Ford Edge vibrates the steering wheel when it thinks that she's gone over the lane markers. Yeah. Another thing I just, oh boy. Kelly O'Grady, automatic seatbelts. Remember those? You get in the car and the thing, But like I said, I remember when people would, complain about just the chime that would let you know that your seatbelt wasn't connected. SIG 226 is stuff from the 80s and 90s, now considered antique. Yes, unfortunately, it is. Of course, you'll see stuff at an antique show that really qualifies more for a junk show or a rummage sale. Some people have the rummage and antique thing overlapping a little bit too much. Lois Miller, are you a 3 Explorer owner now? No, I've only got 2. I traded the 2019 in on the 2024. So I still have my O2. I have an O2 Ford Explorer with 160,000 miles, which runs like a Swiss watch. Canadian Robot Lady is in the house. Thank you very much. Happy Sunday. Hello to everyone in the chat. Thank you for checking in, my friend. I announced a few minutes ago that you had texted me to let me know you were coming. And in fact, here you are. And in fact, there's the text. So thank you very much. Said made a coffee first. Fatty McButterpants says if you punch the dashboard, the car will call 911 thinking you crashed. YouTube username, would these features be from automakers trying to avoid lawsuits? Well, not that one, because what are they going to say? We're going to sue Ford Motor Company for not telling drivers that they're getting sleepy. I mean, that'd be a bit of a stretch. So, Crew Jones, my 1987 Chrysler Conquest did have automatic seat belts. Yeah, those were annoying because it was the weird track thing that would bring the belt up and down. Oh, Manitoba Misanthrope says, well, I'm from the 70s. I guess I'm an antique now. Mexican Spec. Hello, Steve. Hello. Michael Lawless, can you even imagine driving without a seatbelt now? I often wonder what this generation's obvious health issues will be in hindsight. The cell phones? Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of funny because it is true that eventually it resets your baseline. And I remember when I started telling myself, okay, you got to start wearing your seatbelt. You got to start wearing a seatbelt. And now I feel funny if I forget to put it on or if I take it off for whatever reason, don't put it back on again. So Art S says I could shoot a video of me punching the dash of my Explorer. Tim Nosson says I think it's unanimous. Nobody likes the ding 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 take a break feature. And I also do wonder if they purposely made the noise something that would wake you up, as if you're asleep. But I do know they've been talking about this for a while, that they have the ability now very, very easily to put sensors in the car that can tell, like, if your head's nodding off, or I don't know, they can probably read your pupils of your eyeballs to see if they're dilating, simultaneously or not. Driver has brain damage. Ding, ding, ding. Lowell Riggs I Am says I have a VCR attached to my computer so I can record VHS tapes. But why would you want to? Can you just record stuff digitally and play it back that way? Or do you like the effect of putting it onto VHS tape? So Michael Lawless's airliner said that now the 767, 777 will ding if you don't press anything for 20 minutes, and then alerts progressively more from there. Yeah, but aren't those also the ones where it would take over and think you were going into a dive when you weren't, and so on? It's been a while. MH08, my last roll down window was a 72 Cutlass. My Jeep Wrangler didn't have power windows, but of course it didn't have zipper windows. So the last roll down windows, I'm trying to think. I had a Chevy Monza back in like 1984 that had crank windows. Indy Snowman says the automatic seatbelts in a Mazda were great because you didn't have to use the lap belt, which was separate. Kind of defeats the purpose, right? SIG226 modern auto headlights are bright enough to burn retinas. Yeah, that's one problem. And also, a lot of people have got their headlights set towards automatic, where it'll do whatever it thinks. And so I'll be driving on a road towards somebody, and their headlights going bright, low, and I know that it's reacting to different things. And in the old days, you would just go low beam when you saw a car approaching, and now, of course, that's something else. Old Paint points out that I'm actually referring to the 737 Max. The 737 Max was the one that had the problem. It's not me. 07. My 1989 Dodge Daytona had manual windows, donated to charity in 2006. I had a couple of those little Dodges, but I think they all had power windows. Because there's only two windows, right? I mean, there was no like opera windows like that. So it was just two windows. I seem to recall the controls were here. So I remember having passengers get in the car and accidentally start messing with my window. I'm like, hey, you mess with your window, I mess with mine. Yeah, Michael Wallace says the MCAS system. YouTube username says the self-driving systems are currently cameras that look at the driver with a surveillance camera and don't drive by themselves. Sometimes I listen to myself. My 2009 Tacoma has crank windows and manual locks and transmission. 2009, wow. Fred Hoyt says my cable box had VCR outputs to archive shows. I'm kind of curious. I've not looked at the back of the boxes that I currently use to see if there's anything back there if I wanted to run a VCR off of it. I don't know why I'd want to. I don't have a tape player these days. Canadian Robot Lady, my beautiful 30-year-old Mazda MX-3 has the fun roll-up windows with no AC either. But you're in Canada. You don't need AC. KC Jimmy says, what engine did you have in the Monza? You could get a V8. Yeah, no, I had the Iron Duke, the little four-cylinder. It's actually a good engine. I know people who didn't like those, but it was a good engine. Had timing gears, but it did have the issue with some mismatched metal in it that could cause problems if you overheated it. But MH08, what is the obsession with self-driving cars? There is an argument to be made that a lot of this is simply being done because it can be done. Because I've read articles by people who are discussing, like, were Americans clamoring for self-driving cars? No, we weren't. But somebody said, yeah, but I bet we can make them. Oh, okay. Just because you can doesn't mean it's a good idea. Crew Jones says the 1987 turbo four-cylinder Chrysler Conquest could beat almost any Camaro of that same year. The Chrysler Conquest. What am I? I'm trying to imagine what that is. Hang on. Let me look it up. Oh, boy. Watch Steve look up things. Hang on. Chrysler Conquest. I misspelled everything, but I think I'll still get it. Hang on. Images. Oh, yeah. This is the same car as like the friend of mine had one of these cars, but that right there, neat little car. I've driven one of those. Who made it? Was it Mitsubishi? Who made it originally? Rebadged it, but iReal Media electric parking brakes should be made illegal. I agree with you 100%. That's another thing my car's got. And you know something? Emergency brakes should be the manual things. I don't care if you can upgrade some things. Some things should be left. Okay? So Garth Clark says the Dodge 318 V8 for dogs. Maybe they were popular because they were the default engine dealers would order, but the 340 was a completely different animal. No, the 340 is a better engine, but the 318. What I'm saying is back when I was a kid, and somebody had a 318, like, oh, you got a 318, what a piece of junk. And years later, they're talking about, hey, I got a 5-liter engine. How big is that? And then you do the math and you're like, wait a second. That's why they went to liters. Got away from the cubic inches. No. Mike the Mechanic, Mitsubishi Starion, yeah. Ram 50 V8, yes, Mitsubishi had a couple of Plymouth Sapporos. One, I installed the powertrain from a Conquest TSI, made it into a fun car. J. Paul, come on, Steve. Is there a car, make, or model you have not driven? I have not driven a Tucker. I've been offered the chance, and I've actually turned it down. I don't want to be the guy who broke the Tucker. Oh, there's a bunch. There's a bunch of foreign cars I've never driven, but again, I haven't had the opportunity either. Mr. Smithers, wow, and yay, get to see you live. That's good to see you too, my friend, Mr. Smithers. Gotta love the name too. Oh. Pete Nikolich, why do people call the handbrake an emergency brake? The thing that need banning is a stupid park position on auto boxes. Solve a lot of problems. Well, the problem is that a lot of people call it an emergency brake because that's what it is. And they don't call it a handbrake because you work with your foot. I did a video on this a couple years ago because it depends on what kind of car you have. Some e-brakes are you work with your foot. And I've had to go, you still call it a handbrake though? You call it a handbrake when you work it with your foot? Do you really? Okay. Grand Taco, have you ever driven a Toyota? I'm not sure. That I might have, like a rental car or something. L. Jeff, have you ever driven a Dodge Stealth? No. I had a friend who owned one, had a ride in, but never drove it. Never driven a Citroen either, Mark Smith. Lyle McCullough, hey, from K-Pac, Michigan. K-Pac, of course, is the town where the Tucker family lived when Preston Tucker was born. Drove through there about a month ago. Very, very nice little town, kind of off of 69 over east, kind of like between Flint and Port Huronish. Dave Beeler, what kind of tag did you have in your deuce and a half? I got a pickup truck tag. I literally went into the Michigan Secretary of State's office with the title and a proof of insurance. And I said, I got to get a license plate for this truck. And she goes, oh, what is it? And I go, it's AM General. And she looks at it and she goes, oh, 1969 AM General. Yeah, okay. How much does it weigh? And the weight was there. She says, okay, put a civilian tag. No big deal. Old paint, we call it football when you carry it with your hands. I hope you've seen the video of the Saturday Night Live skit where George Washington comes out and says what we're fighting for is self-determination, liberty, and the right to use our own weights and measures. And then he did a follow-up to it where he came out and talked about how we're going to spell things the way we want to spell them. But in the weights and measures skit, he specifically talks about football. And of course, in 1776, his soldiers go, football? And he goes, yes, it's a game where we carry a ball in our hands. What? Oh, boy. Boomer says it is a parking brake, not an emergency brake. Well, it is called both things. Sorry. Oh, boy. Moral Fortitude says a Stealth ain't nothing but a souped-up Ford Probe. Well, yeah, the turbochargers might help, though, right? Brandon H., I like your style, dude. Tim Nosman says, I know in an emergency I want a handbrake or a foot brake versus nothing. See, one of the reasons about calling it a parking brake is that if your car is an automatic, why, don't get me going on that. Kelly O'Grady says the world thinks kickball is football. Kickball. When I was in elementary school, they would have us play kickball, which was like baseball, but you roll a ball and you'd kick it. And it was stupid because you're trying to throw the ball around to get runners out and stuff, but it didn't quite work. Mexican Spec, I've used my parking brake in an emergency when I lost all my brakes. I had to drive a car home on Sunday night using a handbrake all the way. I can tell you that the emergency brake on the M35 was a big old lever right here that you worked with your hand. And the cool thing was it grabbed the drive shaft. And yeah, that that would stop you. Of course, the truck was quite heavy, so. Brandon H, how come people don't do foosball leagues? I always thought foosball was just simply something that the tech bros did in the break rooms at their startups for their internet companies. And but Gilbert says you use the e-brake for doing donuts in a front-wheel drive car. Dave Beeler said I had a 96 Yukon that blew a brake line while driving. Parking brake quickly became an emergency brake. Mr. Frogleg says it is an emergency brake. Yeah, I don't know. Some people get very, very emotional about some of these titles, and it's what they grew up using. I did a video a long, long time ago about how I found some large cents, the big pennies that are about this big in Michigan, and I referred to them as large pennies. And I had somebody go nuts about that. They're not large pennies. It says cent on it, not penny. You can go to the U.S. Mint website, and it actually says that cent and penny are interchangeable. The same thing. But what would the Mint know about pennies or cents? Sometimes I listen to myself as a foosball master when I was in the Air Force. I've seen guys who are really, really good at that. Tim Nossum, was there a rotor on the drive shaft, or did it clamp the drive shaft? I seem to recall that there was something on the drive shaft, but it wasn't like a brake rotor. But yeah, there was basically a strap that went around it, and when you it would just squeeze it. So, Old Paint says there's a brake drum on the drive shaft. It's been a while since I looked at it, so. G Voked, how about 3 on the tree? I've never driven one, but my family had those international travel-alls that were 3s, and I never drove it. I was way too young. My 77 Mazda Repo had the brake handle in the dash, had to pull and turn to lock. A Padre, a Mazda Repo? Is that a name of a car, or or was it repoed? I'm just curious. Art S says, no, it's a cent. We left the British over this. Oh, boy. Moral Fortitude says, oh, shout out to Michigan because Tigers ended their season yesterday, but they came close. It took it to 5 games in that last series, but they're out now. But they came on hot towards the end of the season. It was remarkable. They had almost no chance of making the playoffs, and they did. So you got to give them credit for that. Mark Smith, my Dodge Aspen was 3 on the tree. Dodge Aspen. I always thought that was a strange name for a car. An aspen is a tree. The new Chrysler Oak. Who are the Tigers? L. Jeff. Detroit Tigers, one of the oldest baseball teams in America. And I saw them win the World Series in 1984. I was at Game 5. Reiner Man says Aspen is also a town. Yes, it is, but isn't it named after the tree? Just talking about the origin of the word. Mexican Spec says, yeah, but you can name your cars after cities. Yeah, I suppose. But I mean, would you call a car like, the Chrysler Boulder? You go, well, it's named after the city, not the big rock. Oh, boy. Kelly O'Grady, the 68 Tigers. Yeah, I saw something about that very recently because they keep popping up in memories on Facebook, like so many years ago today, that kind of thing. And 68 Tigers beat St. Louis, and they weren't supposed to. And everything came together just right for them to win. And I mean, I remember I was a little kid, but I remember that and what a big deal that was. And they wouldn't do that again until 1984, and you can do the math on that from 68 to 84. So Sub GR70 says the Red Wings are off to a hot start, 2-0, Stanley Cup bound. You know, it's I haven't followed the Red Wings in a while. I loved it when they had all the Russians on the team. Sergei Fedorov, and watching Fedorov play was like watching an artist. And of course, Vladimir Konstantinov. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go to YouTube and type in Konstantinov hits reel and just watch a reel of him hitting people and not punching, just running into them on the ice. He elevated checking into an art form. He could get somebody could know that he was out to get them, and he would somehow manage to clobber them in such a way legally that it's like, whoa, he's hitting harder than you see people get hit in football games. Just a heck of a defenseman. Sadly, he was injured in that limo crash, but an amazing player also. But Sergei Fedorov is one of my favorite players of all time for any sport. But he was good. But what I liked about him also was, and I'm just topping off my Gatorade here, is that he looked like he was having fun. He was having fun out there. And so many times you watch professional sports and some players making, $150 million contract. And yeah, it's a job, but they you watch Sergei Fedorov, he looked like he was having fun. J. Paul says the day after they won the World Series in '84, Michigan Avenue looked like a war zone on my way to work. I'm sure it did. Oh boy, almost all the grass was removed from Tiger Stadium by people who jumped over the fence to get souvenirs. I actually got me and my friends out of there as quickly as he could and got home and then watched the carnage on television. So, Sub GR, all of the Russian 5 were awesome. Excuse me. Oh, gotta stop smoking stogies before I start doing the show. I'm joking. Mark Miller, are CDGR and Stellantis products going under in the U.S.? I don't know. I keep hearing things about the former Chrysler having problems, but I don't know. I also hear a lot of stories about how their parent company doesn't really care that much about that American stepchild. Mrs. Teresa, 1999, in the early 80s, my mother bought a brand new Thunderbird. Less than 2 weeks later, the drive shaft fell out. I remember my dad saying, I'm going back to get the rest of your mother. That's the kind of thing you hear about, and you're like, what? What? But I read a book on the history. I've read several books on the history of the American auto industry, and a book on the history of Chrysler in particular. There was a time when the Chrysler people, the white-collar workers who were making the big decisions about what was happening in the assembly lines, actually said, we don't mind if cars are shipped with defects because the dealership will find them and fix them under warranty, and then we'll pay to have the work done. So it's better to have the line moving fast and cranking the cars out than it is to slow the line down and try to make every car perfect. And so what happened was, that was the plan. The cars get shipped to dealers, and the dealers will sell them as fast as they can because the dealer's number one job is to sell cars. And when they were told, but you're supposed to check the car out to see what's wrong with it before you sell it, they're like, oh, yeah, we'll do that. Sure, we'll jump right on that. So somebody drives their brand new car home, and the drive shaft falls out. Now, that obviously wasn't a Chrysler in that story there, but, weird stuff happens. You're like, how did this happen? And because they had such low standards for a period of time on the assembly lines. Now, they've changed a lot of that now because they've had to, because they're competing with people who wouldn't have those. But the number of defects per car that was considered acceptable was astronomical compared to what it is now. So, Mutants says, I had a 64 Plymouth Fury with a push-button transmission. Yeah, that was a thing for a little while with American car companies. Doug Jones, I think the Plymouth Valiant had push button transmission also. Yeah, there's a few different companies. Mark Smith, Edsel had them. I remember that. Mexican specs is a lot of the new 1988 Chevrolet C&K trucks came in with the brake lights staying on. Truck went straight from the truck to the service department, meaning from the delivery truck into the service department. Oh boy. Yeah, and so Devin Bounce says that Chrysler thinking is the opposite of Toyota thinking. Who's winning? Yeah, and that was the kind of thing, and it happened because the American car companies had such a huge market share at one point in time that they were basically competing with themselves. It didn't matter. And Kelly O'Grady says, yeah, Japanese quality forced to change. Think back. Oh, Jerry Brown, Gung Ho, the Michael Keaton movie. That's a great movie about the clash of cultures. But there was a time when, think back to the mid 70s and like a Chevrolet product. You get in the car, it's got plastic seats, plastic dashboard, and the dashboard is just this big speedometer. It goes from one side to the other. That's all it is. And then there's a fuel gauge and a couple idiot lights. That's it. It's how imaginative is that? And everything was just so cheap and poorly built. And to save money, we decided to make the straps on the glove box out of plastic. So on a cold day, you open your glove box and the door falls off and hits the floor. And then you discover, all of the clamps under the hood. They're using those clamps where you squeeze them and let them go, as opposed to clamps that actually require a screwdriver to tighten them. See, by eliminating that hose clamp with the screw on it, we're going to save 3 cents a car. And over 1 million cars, that's going to add up. Yeah, okay. So there you go. Padre Mopars also had the left-hand thread lug nuts on the left side. Yes. And so did my AM General M35. That also had them. And you had to tell people, my 69 Dodge Charger had those. You had to go into the dealership and remind them, if you're getting a brake job or tires or anything like that, go, by the way, guys, left-hand side threads are backwards. They go, really? But you also had to tell them with the key, teeth up in the old days. So it's one of those things. They stopped doing that because it confused too many people. Keeger 4 official. I just got power back after Milton. Oh my God. You understand. Loss of power like that is one of those things that really worries me. And I feel for anybody who lost power, especially if you lost it for a period of time like that. It's so rough. So you have my sympathy. I'm glad you made it. I hope you're okay. But wow, unbelievable. Doug Jones, I worked at a Ford dealer in the 70s, had 2 cars come off the same delivery truck with engine knocks. Both were missing rod bearings. Oh, we need those now? Maybe a pissed off employee. That I have actually met somebody who worked on an assembly line who told me they sabotage cars on purpose. He thought it was funny. So Old McDonald has a car. I can remember the time my brother and I took the Gratiot bus to Tiger Stadium, and the bus had a blowout, and everyone hit the floor thinking it was a gunshot. Hey, it's a natural reaction down there. Oh, boy. Prince Albert says Toyota still uses the spring clamps because they expand and contract as the radiator. Huh. Okay. I'd have to see some science on that to see if that actually over a long period of time makes that big of a difference. But I tend to like the clamps that you can tighten or loosen with a screwdriver. Padre says some people in my county in Georgia still have no power. Wow. That is rough. Tim Nossen, remember the Detroit blackout with the price gouging? There have been a few, but I remember when I've talked about this before. In 1977 or 78, I think it was 78, a snowstorm hit southeastern Michigan and Windsor that was ridiculous. Like 18 inches of snow in like one day, and it shut down the whole corner of the state of Michigan for weeks. Gilbert will remember. And we were without power for days and days and days and days. I remember it vividly. And in the wintertime, I mean, that was rough. So J. Paul, 78, Steve. Cromwell, it was 77. I think it was 78, but Ram 50 V8 says, I think the spring clamp is actually better. They are referred to as a constant tension clamp. We're going to have to agree to disagree on that. The problem with a spring clamp is there's no way to adjust how tight it is. And don't tell me that, oh no, it'll always stay the perfect tightness. So STP will remember the Niagara Falls blackout. Yes. Are you talking about the one that happened? Was it early 2000s or late 90s? Because I remember at the time, I actually lived in an area that didn't lose power. Everybody else lost power. And I had friends who were visiting from out of state, and they were staying someplace with no power. And I called them, they were complaining, and I go, what are you guys upset about? He goes, we got no power. And I'm like, oh, that's too bad. And he goes, you don't understand. He goes, we haven't had showers yet. I'm like, dude, come on over. He brought his family over and they all took showers at my house. And he goes, is this weird? And I go, no. I'm not using a shower right now. Oh. Daniel Kester is in the house. Daniel, my good friend, thank you. I'm glad you're here. I've gotten some messages from Daniel before indicating that he wasn't quite sure if I recognized that he was here, and he is here. So there you go, my friend. Mike L., we had a snowstorm in October of 87. Where was that, though? In what state, if snow is that big of a deal? Stanley Snow Monkey says 78 started out as sleet and ice. Five Star says, dumb question. When is it too late to pursue law school? I have an associate as a paralegal and associate in real estate, but 49, interested in personal injury. I'm guessing that's what that word's supposed to be. If you're 49 years old, you are not too late, but you still need to get an undergraduate degree, correct? Like a bachelor's. So you may need to do the bachelor first, then the law degree. But I had someone in my class who was in her 60s, and I knew people who got their law degrees later than normal, but they had experience that allowed them to get into some pretty quickly. So it's expensive, but make the calculations. But you're not too late. It's never too late. Ed G., I live in Pennsylvania, the Poconos. We lose power all the time. It's ridiculous how often it happens because they don't manage the trees. I'll tell you right now, they just came through recently where I live and butchered the trees. And I'm not going to complain much about what they did on my property, but my neighbors have this old pine tree, and they looked at it and decided that rather than just trimming it back on one side, they just topped it. They took the top off of it, and it looks absurd. And I wondered at my friend's house, I'm like, my neighbor's house, I'm like, because I made us take it down now. Like, what? So. Yeah, Tim Nosmus is the black I was referring to as 2003. So I thought it was early 2000s. I forgot the exact year. No power between the Ohio border to Farmington. And I think it went further north in Oakland County than that, but not much further. But I do remember that, and that's when my friend was in town. Like I said, he brought his family over to take showers. Now, J. Paul says it was actually 77 to 78 because it started right before Christmas vacation. We were off school through the first week in January in 12th grade. And then Old McDonald has a car says a 78 storm was on Thanksgiving night. Forecast is for 18 inches. Okay, so hang on. Steve's going to the phone 1/3 time here. Michigan big snowstorm. And there's a blizzard of 77 and a blizzard of 78. Snowfalls the entire storm of 78 included a whopping 30 inches at Muskegon and 19 at Lansing and Grand Rapids. The Great Blizzard of 1978. But there was a big blizzard in 77 also. But the article I'm reading here is from 2023. It says it's been 45 years since a powerful blizzard dropped more than a foot of snow in southeast Michigan, one of the more memorable weather events in recent history. So I'm thinking of 78, but there could be another one. Gina Maria Italiano, did I miss anything good? No. Reinhard, man, the wind can blow the top of the tree into the lines. No, of course it can. My point is, when you're looking at the tree and there's a line here and the tree goes like this, and you go, well, let's just cut the top off right there. Number one, if the top continues to grow, I don't think it will once you top it. I think it's going to kill the tree. It looks so weird and stupid that I think they should just cut the whole tree down. And now my friend, if he cuts it down himself with the power lines there, he's got to be worried about that. So he'll probably have to hire pros to do it, in which case it's like, why didn't they just cut the whole thing down? I don't know if you discussed it with them or not, but Pod races, I am now convinced there should be no trees within 100 feet of a power line. I can tell you that they actually have rules and regulations about it, because I've actually been intimately involved with the putting in of power lines across property where there were trees. And they said, we need this wide of an area that is vertical airspace free of trees. So we can put the power lines right here. And then they said, and we'll continue maintaining these by keeping those, in essence, imaginary lines like this clear. But you can tell a lot of the time they're just kind of eyeballing it, going, they bring out the equipment and they do it. So Fatty McButterpants is now heading out to split some firewood. Good for you. David Persons last Nessman reported that a great lizard was ravaging the East Coast because the teletype left the letter B off. Great lizard. Daniel Kester, I got a book sent to you from Amazon. Have you received it? Yes, I did, sir. In fact, I'm looking at it right now. It's on the desk right there. Thank you. Appreciate that. Crew Jones, like the tree they destroyed to make the redwood that you can drive through. You have to understand the sensibility of Americans back in, like, I don't know, the 1930s and 40s. It's like, we'll have a huge park for these redwood trees. You know, it'd be cool if we could drive through one. Okay, let's cut a tunnel through a tree. I'm sure the tree won't mind. Old McDonald has a car, says too many people try to stop utilities from trimming trees. Well, they've got the right to do it because, you know, the power lines are run across an easement. The easement says specifically to run the power and maintain the lines. And the easement, of course, goes up into the space where the power lines are. So it's going to happen. I've seen some tree trim jobs that where I'm looking at it going, I think they could have done that better, but it can get rough. Crew Jones says, I'm not arguing, Steve. I get it like you do. I forgot. What did I comment on? Oh, no, of course. No, I get that. I completely understood. I'm with you, man. I'm on your frequency. Harry Selden, how do you wash the Cobra without soaking the interior? Yeah, you don't run it through a car wash. You don't hit it with a garden hose with the spray nozzle on. Very carefully. But you also don't get it dirty. That's the real key to keeping your car clean, is to avoid getting it dirty in the first place. So MHO8, some utilities will say that it's the customer's responsibility to trim their own trees. Really? I've never seen that. I do know that the utilities will often say that you should report to them if something's threatening a power line. And a good friend of mine who's an attorney in California told me that at one point in time he was defending a power company that got sued because somebody's house burned down. And the house burned down because power lines were running up against the garage roof because it'd been pinned there by a tree that fell over. And the power company says that if a tree falls over and takes out a power line, you notify us and we'll come out and take care of it. And this guy said, I called the power company repeatedly and they never came out. And finally, my garage burned down. So my friend gets handed this case and they go to court and defend this case. And he goes, the first time I ever saw the defendant was in the hallway in the court. And he goes, it was a priest wearing his outfit with a collar. And he's going to go in front of a jury and go, I called them. And they're going to go, no, he's a liar. He's like, how fast can we settle this case? Oh, boy. Grande Taco says also don't drive the Cobra in the rain. That is true. Gilbert says a tonneau cover. I've got a cover that goes over the passenger compartment, but I don't think it's waterproof enough where you could wash it and work around that. Lowell Riggs, I am. Anybody remember Woodsy the Owl? Give a hoot. Don't pollute. It's like Johnny Horizon. Oh, Wadley 99 is the Cobra real or a kit car? Well, it is a replica. It is not built one of the original Shelby Cobras, which would be worth $2 or $3 million. But it was put together by a company called Backdraft Cobra. Look them up; they make very, very cool cars. Grande Taco says a tree falling on a roof reminds you too much of the tree falling in a forest. There's got to be a joke in it somewhere. Probably. Crew Jones, I'd love HOA specific segment because you've made it clear you were part them at a time. I've mentioned that I lived in a condominium for a couple of years, and I was actually on the board for a couple of years. And but I personally would never live in an HOA unless it was extremely unusual circumstances. Like if I owned a piece of property and I developed it myself, and I sold off some parcels to friends of mine or something. I may say, let's create an HOA so we can maintain these common elements. But I hear nothing but bad stories. I mean, I'm exaggerating. There are some people who like them, but it's so hit or miss. Zach Forbes, if you have to summon Valvoline to small claims court, who do you serve the papers on? Depends what state you're in, but you can serve their corporate representative. They have a resident agent, most likely. Most big corporations do. And you probably serve it upon them. So I sue Ford, GM, and Chrysler all day long. And I serve their resident agents. And they once they get it, they turn it over to the right people. So Bob Loblaw is in the house. Duke Energy changed arborists 2 years ago. Have not lost power since. It used to go off if there was a light breeze. Garth Clark, is your Cobra the small or big V8? I went with the small V8, which is a Roush Coyote, 3rd generation, aluminum block, aluminum heads. It gets around. I could have ordered it with a supercharged big block, and the salesman I work with is a friend of mine named Mark Lieberman, said, Steve, that car would kill you. So decided not to. Yeah, Padres says, remember the crying Indian or Native American because of litter? And of course, it turns out later, I think he was an actor who was not Native American, but that happens. Sub GR77 says, yeah, kit cars are real cars. Yeah, but that's your definition. Daniel Kester, ever thought of a replica Batmobile? Somebody else mentioned that also. Not really. For one thing, it's just a big car. I mean, it's a cool car. And I met George Barris, talked to him for a while one day, years ago. But I've never had a desire to actually own one. It'd be kind of cool, but it's not that cool. Oh. Kelly O'Grady, people too weird today for HOA ownership. That's the problem. Is all it takes is one or two people who aren't with the program to get on the HOA board and make it a nightmare. And I remember reading the rules for the condo, going, I can live with most of these rules. But then you encounter somebody who's militant about like, oh, I was walking by your porch the other day and there's something on your porch that shouldn't have been there. And it's like, I brought it in 5 minutes later. Well, I don't know because I'm pretty sure I saw it the next day. No, you didn't. And it's like, oh boy. Carl's Corner says the Indian was an Italian actor. That's what I thought. I knew he was not Native American. And unfortunately, there's a lot of stuff from the 60s and 70s that you look back on now and you go, yeah, politically that wouldn't fly today. Oh, we've emptied the Yeti. So there you go. Again, for those who don't know, this was sent in by a viewer who said he was sick of seeing me drinking out of plastic bottles on camera, but also it's still icy cold. Tim Nossum says your car is by no means a kit car. It was a full turnkey manufacturer. It falls in a gray area. I didn't build it. Okay. And I saw photographs of it being built. But it was delivered in full running condition to a dealership where I picked it up and drove it. But I actually met a guy. I think I've told the story at the Woodward Dream Cruise, a guy who had a Cobra. And I walked up to it and I was looking at it and I go, so who built this? And he goes, I did. And he actually bought a kit and built it. And you could tell there was some things about it that were just not quite the same standards as you would have when something gets built at a place where they build a lot of something, you know how to do it perfectly. So Mark Smith, paint color is a frequent violation for HOAs. You have no idea. I did a video within the last year or two about a place down in Florida where they had an accepted color palette. And if you wanted to repaint your house, you had to go and say, I want to repaint my house. And they would tell you, you have to choose one of these colors. And the person repainted their house and the painting company made a mistake and used something that was close, but not quite. And something the average person would never have noticed. But now it's like, oh, you now have to take your entire house and repaint it, or we're going to start charging you like $100 a day, but escalate it. And like, oh, hundreds of dollars a day. A. Thompson, any cases of EVs burning down people's homes, who pays for that? Generally speaking, who pays for that is the insurance company and the home, and then they turn around and seek subrogation from the company if it's the car's fault. It reminds me of the stories involving Ford Motor Company back in the day. They had a problem with ignition switches where a parked car might catch on fire, and that's not good. And if that was inside your garage attached to your house, it'd burn your house down. And there were examples of houses that burned down because of Ford ignition switches catching on fire in an attached garage and burning everything down. And so, State Farm or whoever it is has an insurance to the house would pay for the damage to the house and turn right around and sue Ford. And then, of course, then you get to litigate that. So, Jay Paul says an HOA yelled at a guy about his open garage door while waiting for the kids to get into the car. They said, keep it closed until they're in. Yeah, that's the kind of crazy stuff you hear about. Like, wait, I'm limited in how often I can open my garage door. Like, who cares? So, Indy Snowman, I met an attorney who specialized in fighting HOAs. You wrote a book about it. Yeah, I talked to the guy. I did a story on him. There's a guy out in Arizona or Nevada who got in a fight with an HOA because they said he was a member, but he wasn't. And they tried to claim that his property should have been in the HOA, but it isn't, and it wasn't. And he wound up fighting them and winning. And then he wrote a book about the experience. I forgot the guy's name. But Mark Sparks, I have a Chevy Bolt. I leave it outside. With an appropriate name, too. Oh, XXPY rocks. F the HOA lawn sign. Yeah, I have a sneaky feeling if you put up a sign that says F the HOA, but with a full word for the F, they might come by and say, yeah, I think your lawn sign violates our HOA bylaws. Uh, Boomer says, Steve, I thought it was the brake switch mounted on the master cylinder is causing fires. There was a problem with the ignition switches. Early 90s. And I know that vividly because I had several friends who worked at Ford OGC, Office of General Counsel, and they had many meetings about the ignition switches. So, Tim Nossum, my brother lives in an HOA where you can't park your car in your driveway, only the garage. DS says, you remind me of my trial practice professor. He also worked as a disc jockey before practicing. Was I your professor? I taught trial practice also. Yeah, and I worked as a disc jockey before I went to law school, and I worked as a talk show host later. So, A. Thompson says, I don't like a bunch of animals in my neighborhood. The HOA got the chickens some guy bought out of here. So, yeah, no, that's an example of the HOA doing something the right way, right? So you say you can't have livestock or farm animals running around loose. I know people who live in neighborhoods, they go, my neighbor got chickens. Now there's chickens in my yard. I'm like, well, if the chickens got in my yard, they'd probably disappear pretty quickly. But that's just me. But I agree with stuff like that. But that makes sense. But I know people, like I said, who got in trouble because the drapes were the wrong color inside their house because they could be seen from the outside. And you're like, what? My whole thing is, if you know what you're getting yourself into and can live with it, do it. But I know people who said, oh, I found my dream house. It's in an HOA. I figure I can live with it, but I never read the rules. Well, you better read the rules because you might find out it's not just getting rid of the chickens. It might also be that you cannot have your garage door open more than 12 minutes a day or something. So, DS says that this was in California. Keep up the good work. Thank you. I appreciate that. Carl's Corner, new game. What jobs has Steve not had? Oh, there's lots of jobs I've never had. I'm not shy about talking about the ones I did have. I know people who you will be talking about something casually, go, oh yeah, I used to do that. What? You never mentioned that before. I've never worked in food service. Never. I've never worked in a restaurant. I've never worked for a pizza delivery place. I've never worked in food service ever. That's and I know people are like, you're kidding me. I worked in restaurants, I worked as a waiter, I made food, washed dishes. No, never. Never. Sig 226, a pet donkey would be nice. Oh. Tim Nossum, was it long to learn the Michigan law if you went to school in California? Yes. Long is the wrong word. Hard is a better word. So you go to law school. I went to law school in California. You go to law school in some state, and they will tell you that you will be learning general law, not of this state. So if you go to University of Michigan, they don't teach you Michigan law. If you go to UCLA, they don't teach you California law. If you go to, Ave Maria, they don't teach you Florida law. Okay, you learn general law, common law, federal law, and general concepts of law. BS. They have to give you examples of stuff at the state level. And now it's true, a lot of the big case books, if your book on torts or book on contracts, will have cases from all over the country. But when they start getting into things like discussing the rules of evidence, quite often they'll say the federal rules say this and the state rules say this. To give you an example, let's look at the California, and they use California as an example more often than anything else. And I never had them say, oh, let's use the Michigan rules as an example. So what you do is when you get out of law school, you take a bar review course. And I took a course where I literally would go in every morning, Monday through Friday, and sit in a classroom with a guy lecturing specifically on Michigan law. And I forgot how many weeks the course was, but it was a lengthy course, and I felt like I was going to law school all over again. I'd already graduated, and I'm in the class learning about Michigan stuff I'd never learned before. But the good news is I took the Michigan bar and I passed it on the first try. So something worked. So Reiner Van says, I've never worked as a brain surgeon, at least as far as I can remember. Mr. Smithers, if you had a restaurant, could we call it Lehto's Slaw? That would be the top of the menu, I would think. Mark Miller says he had a customer threaten to come down and shoot him when the pizza was wrong. Calm down, dude. It's a pizza. Fred Hoyt says my condo now allows emotional support dogs. And of course, what happens is anybody who wants a dog goes, hey, I need an emotional support dog. STP World, do you remember the Niagara Falls blackout from 2003? Yeah, somebody asked about that earlier. That's the incident where my friend John came to my house with his wife and kids. And they all took showers. DS says, after bar review, I swore I'd never read a book again. That's about right. I am convinced that the reason I need these is from law school. Now, I've studied this, and I've had people say, you know something, it's just right around the same time you went to law schools when a lot of people start developing issues with their eyes because they're getting older. I graduated law school at the age of 29-ish, and before law school, didn't need these. After law school, I needed them, and it's for reading, and it's I read so much stuff for law school. Mark Miller, if he misses it, ask again. What did Mark Miller ask? Customer with a bad pizza. Sorry. In obscurity, my driveway needs an emotional support vehicle. Why not? Tim Nossum ever work at a country club? No, I never did. I had friends who did. But like I had a friend who made tons of money as a caddy at I think he caddied at Oakland Hills, which is like one of the best golf courses in the Midwest. They often have PGA events there. And my friend caddied there, and he made so much money. It was a joke. But I didn't know anything about golf. So I'm like, I can't do that. So I worked at the gas station. Lehto's Law, the movie starring Omar Sharif as a small-time gambler, Natalie Wood, a plucky airline attendant, and they meet at the big tables of Monte Carlo for action, adventure, and romance. J. Paul says, Steve, Mark asked what's the difference between covenants and an HOA. Well, covenants are just the promises that follow with the property that you agree to abide by if you buy the property. And the HOA usually has covenants or rules or something that are very similar to that, but they're overseen or governed by a homeowners association. And so the question is, who enforces the covenants that come with the property? Condominiums are overseen by usually a condo board, very similar to an HOA, but a little different. So DS went and got the LLM. That's the master's degree you get when you are a lawyer and you want to get some more legal learning. There's some topics that's very, very useful in some fields where if you're going to practice in that field, you probably do want to get a little more learning in as well. Casper asks, aren't all dogs basically emotional support companions? I would tend to agree with that. I mean, A. Thompson says, run through a typical lemon law case. I buy a car and it throws a rod. Well, generally speaking, what happens is you buy a brand new car and something goes wrong with it in the first year you own it. Something major, okay? Throws a rod. You take it to the dealership and you say, guys, I think it threw a rod. Let's assume you know that. And they take it apart, put it back together, and give it back to you. That's fixed. You're driving a little longer, and again, mechanical engine breakdown, it dies on you again. You take it back to the dealership. After you've brought it in Michigan 3 times, you can send a last chance letter especially, when it happens again, but before you bring it in, you send a last chance letter and you go, it's happened again. I demand that you fix it or you buy it back. And if they don't agree to fix it or buy it back, then you sue them and make them buy it back. So that's generally how it works. The most common problems we have, though, are massive electrical problems, electronic problems, or weird engine issues. Nowadays, engines are so complicated, they're not working perfectly. It's like nobody can fix them. Yeah, the engine control module, the body control module, and the transmission control module aren't communicating right now. It turns out that they just don't get along anymore. David Persons, 4 years of seminary did that to my eyes. Yeah, that will do it. That will do it. Were you reading a lot of like the Bible itself or books about? I assume probably both, right? Oh boy. Crew Jones, all dogs go to heaven. I would tend to believe that. There are no bad dogs, only bad owners. Jerry Brown, dogs should be working animals. Jay Brown, good morning, Steve. Great to see you again. Good to see you as well, my friend. Ram 50 V8, what car was it you had that hated timing belts? It was the Shelby IROC RT. I forgot all the different designations it had, but it was the engine with the dual overhead cam, and it had a timing belt that was like 75 feet long. I'm joking. And I later found out that they almost all had problems with their timing belts. In fact, I got it bought back by Chrysler, despite the fact I bought it used. And that's when I realized there was a real problem because they don't have to buy back used cars, and they did. David Persons, Bible, philosophers, theology, history, education, and so on. STP World, do you remember the Crash Test Dummies VHS tape? Well, I remember the band, the Crash Test Dummies. Are we talking about an actual VHS tape? Daniel Kester, is a CRL in today? She was. I've not seen her mention. Oh, there she is. Daniel Kester, sure am. Elliot suggests that the Canadian robot lady could narrate the proposed movie. I'm assuming Omar Sharif plays me, though, right? I mean, I'm assuming. In obscurity says the modules were assembled in different countries would cause the communication issues, right? Here's the thing. When you have several things in sequence or that are interconnected and something goes wrong, some genius can go, okay, that fault is only caused by this, right? What happens is you have two things go bad at the exact same time. And somebody goes, what could cause that? And it's almost like not a chain, but like a web, the weakest links in the web. And I've had clients who had cars doing the dumbest things, and dealerships literally go, we don't even know, like, what, huh? Like, huh? So, XX Pyrox, have you been to Stahl's Auto Museum, 26 Mile in Gratiot? Yes. They have a Chrysler turbine car. They let me drive it. I also sat there when they interviewed me for the documentary about the turbine car. Stahl's is one of the coolest museums in the world. They've also got a Tucker. And it's just a guy, Stahl, and his car collection got to be so big. And he also collects other things, including huge musical instruments and things. And he's got a bunch of really cool cars, really, really cool cars. And he decided to just open a museum so other people can enjoy his cars. And he bought the former Monahan turbine car that was owned by Frank Kleptz, who got it running with the help of Jay Leno and Bob Lutz. And then the car now runs and is at the Stahl Museum, and they let me drive it. So there you go. Harry Selden says, not if you like rocking the Casbah, because Sharif don't like it. Blazer 02 LS, the new Caddy has 122 different modules in it. Why have a module in each taillight? The taillights are probably going to become self-aware one of these days and take over the car. I don't no. Mark Smith, we had the problem with Navy manuals, unfixable if two things went wrong. Yeah, that's the problem. And it's don't get me wrong. If everything works properly in a modern car, it is amazing what they do. But when things break down and you take it to a dealership for repair, if they're like, we don't know what's wrong with it. Oh boy. Jay Klein, was the car a Shelby Charger? I believe it was. Like I said, it was the Charger with a whole bunch of designations. I'm looking something up again here. So let's go Dodge Charger Daytona Z. See what that pulls up. Okay. Got to go through a whole bunch of things here. History. So I had, hang on, let's see here. The Shelby Z. Hold on. I know it was IROC also. It was everything. Hang on. I believe it was called Dodge Daytona IROC RT, but I could have sworn it was a Shelby Z or something. Anyways, all I know is that it. I'll look that up. I'll get back to you next week. All I know is that dual overhead cam. Elliot Pollock now says Jay Leno proposed as cast of comedian card dealer. A. Thompson says the car has to have the problem 3 times to start a lemon law claim. Yes, but or 25 days in the shop. So if the car spends 25 days in the shop, you can send the last chance letter also. I've had a bunch of those lately where somebody takes the car in and they go, we can't figure it out. We have a zone rep coming in 2 weeks. And you're like, Mark Smith says IROC ZRT. I think I remember I was so ticked off of the car. I don't have any pictures of it either, I don't think. But I'll look it up. Mark Miller had an 82 Escort that had everything, but I totaled it rear-ending somebody who stopped at a yield sign. Oh, Crew Jones likes Jay in his pieces with Donald Osborne, Assess and Caress, where they talk about cars. They bring up 3 cars that are thematically tied together. And Donald Osborne talks what the cars are worth and how the values have changed recently. A. Thompson, my mother had a Hyundai Equus in the shop for 30 days waiting for a power seat module. Yeah, that's a weird problem too. There's a famous case in Michigan called Ayer versus Ford Motor Company, and I actually worked on the case. And a guy bought a brand new Ford pickup truck, was driving up north on I-75, and the engine blew up. Had it towed into a local dealer, and they said, well, we'll replace the engine for you under warranty, but we haven't got one in stock. So how long is it going to take? And they go, 30, 60 days, something like that. And he goes, okay. So he calls the attorneys, and around day 25, they send the last chance letter. And a little while later, car's not fixed. File the lawsuit. And then Ford found an engine and very quickly fixed the car. Here, it's fixed. Come get it. And at the Court of Appeals, and I know this because I was there, at the Court of Appeals, the attorney for Ford Motor Company goes, well, we fixed it as soon as the parts came in. The statute says specifically that unless the parts are delayed by like acts of God or war, preferably both, you can't use a delay in parts as an excuse. And the Court of Appeals just said, no, you lose. So the plaintiff won. Bob blah blah says, is the clock on the wall the big one, analog or digital? It is digital in big bright blue letters. I think I can do this. Hang on, I'll show you. Here's the wonders of modern technology. I can go like this. And hang on. Oh, this is going to work out perfectly. Let's see how this photograph turns out. Yep. So there's the big clock on the wall I'm always talking about. Well, that reads 2:59. And yes, I purposely got one in blue. I could have gotten it in red, and red looked too frantic to me. You watch the clock, and it's red. Blue, calming. Red, no. Jay Paul says you are allowed to stop at a yield sign. Well, you're allowed to if you are yielding to somebody, but you shouldn't just stop at them randomly. XX Pyrox, do you have a pet dog? No, I do not. I used to have two, Milo and Wolfie, but it's been a while. Ram 50 V8, the module issue is getting worse. Many cars spread out operation across numerous modules, so no one module can make a decision on its own. The selection defies reason. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Dexter GD says, on your pool video with the Michigan SCOTUS rule, since the hole was dug, the work was completed. Well, no, it's whether the work was performed. But the problem is the lug nut case arose under the Motor Vehicle Service Repair Act, which says specifically that if they charge you money, they must perform the work. But this would not fall under that act. So this is a much better case to go on. I actually got an email from a gentleman who's a prosecutor in another state, and he said, Steve, believe it or not, I've got a case identical to that I'm prosecuting starting Monday. And I said, please let me know how it goes. And Jay Paul says, correct, that's what I meant, that you don't randomly stop at them, but you can if you have to. In Carl's Corner, nope, hang on, it wasn't Carl's Corner. Crew Jones. Remember the first production electric vehicle was produced in 1891, far more than 100 years ago. Yeah, there's actually a lot of electric cars back then. In fact, Jay Leno's got a few, speaking of Jay. But electric cars were a big, big deal. And then they got overtaken by the gasoline-powered ones. Yeah, MH08, I still use an old analog clock radio. Is it like the one in Groundhog Day? I had a clock radio just like that when I was in junior high. Randy Pabo, I have a record player with Bluetooth. I just took it off someone's hand, still in the box. You want it? No, thanks. I don't have that many records, and I would not get around to playing it. Daniel Kester says the clock doesn't say anything. It displays it. Yes, but colloquially we say it says something. The same way that I said, hey, and I was talking to Jerry, and Jerry goes, Jerry doesn't go. Jerry said. I remember having a teacher say to me, I'm like, but you know what I meant, right? Mark Smith says Jay Leno has a baker. Is that the one that looks like a big phone booth, the glass one? Blazer O2LS, have you toured Jay's shop? Yes, on 3 different occasions. Twice involving with a Chrysler Turbine car, and once where he was kind enough to invite my brother and myself to bring my father out to his shop, and he took my dad for a ride with us in the backseat in the Duesenberg, which was pretty cool. The barrel side LeBaron Duesenberg. So I am going to end right now because I'm all out of Gatorade, and it's been 2 hours. We will talk again next week. Until then, just check me out. Otherwise, normal on my 2 channels, and behave yourself. Bye-bye.